Welcome, Slayers of Giants, to Tilting at Windmills. I just finished paying all of the royalties, and I am jacked up on way too much Red Bull, so I thought I would take you on one of my very late night wanders through the streets of Barcelona. Beautiful city that I love. And so you can see behind me, if you're watching on YouTube, those of you who are listening to the podcast might not be able to see visually, but my eyebrow piercings are ridiculously large. I know they're stupid. Those of you who are on YouTube, the little tiny ones fell out that I actually like, and I've got these absurd large ones, so sorry about that. But I am excited to share a little bit of thank you message as we are wrapping up the year, and I have just finished the royalty paying. That is one of those interesting parts of the job. You would think, were I a good business person, that a good capitalist, I would be going, oh, I had to actually pay the people who did the labor. That's such a terrible thing. In fact, I love it. I think writers should be paid, and artists should be paid, and poets should be paid. And so I wish every time that I could be giving them more money, but it was heartening to get to engage in that and to get to send them their checks, meager though they were, as a little thank you for all of their efforts. Ooh, a police car just went by with those blue flashers, made for some cool lighting effects. That's unusual here. The police rarely use their flashers, and even less their sirens. A city this large, if this was in the United States, would be sirens all the time. And here they really go out of their way to avoid that. Sorry about the interruption there. Anyway, I wanted to thank you very specifically. Well, I want to break down the you that I am thanking. First, of course, thank you to the authors and poets and now visual artists, thanks to the ANTIFA Lit Journal, who have shared their work through NotAPipePublishing this year. None of this would be possible without those folks sharing their art, and that just means a great deal to me as not just a publisher, but as a reader myself. I get to read your amazing work, and I am very grateful for that. But I also want to thank those of you who are watching this who are readers. And I want to explain a little bit about kind of why in the time that we are living in. So this is trackable historically. Anytime there is a technological change in terms of the way people get their information, there are people who are able to manipulate that, and that's because it takes us a while, generally a generation, to adjust to new ways to receive information. And in the meantime, we are subject to being able to be manipulated by a new form of media. And I am not a Luddite who is opposed to technology. I am communicating with all of you right now on, YouTube or via a podcast you are listening to through your headphones, through your amazing supercomputer that you carry in your pocket. Like, I am not opposed to tech, but I do recognize, and this goes way back, the Gutenberg printing press, you can see, leads to the dissemination of wonderful ideas and huge advancements technologically, and is great, and also a whole bunch of wars, because people at first are able to get a whole bunch of information they were not able to get before, and they fight over it, right? And some of those folks were clearly, whether they were right or wrong, led to things like the Reformation. And you may think that was a good thing, but the war's not so great for the people who died in them, right? So when there is new technology, people do end up in bad situations. And then we see this again, people start to trust newspapers, and they kind of learn, okay, newspapers are this means to communicate information. And then yellow journalism and the sinking of the Lusitania and World War I, right? And then video becomes available, and people just haven't yet adjusted to the fact that people can be very easily manipulated by their own emotional responses to video in ways that they just weren't prepared for. And it is not a surprise that propagandists from, the fascist end of the spectrum really capitalized on this to be able to manipulate people who were used to reading newspapers and now were being exposed to film. And we see this in our world now as well. And I don't want to say that this is the kind of primary driver of the rise of the current rise of fascism. I understand there are many, many, many causes, and teasing out which thing is causing this is impossible. Is it structural racism? Is it structural sexism? Is it the rise of wealth inequality? Is it the fact that we are all, facing down kind of the impending doom of global climate change, and some people are saying cash in while there's still cash to be had? Like, these are all absolutely factors, but I think it's worth acknowledging that one of the factors is that people haven't yet learned how to not be manipulated by new technology. And so they are consuming their information in a new way. And you are seeing kind of the short attention span, is having very real world consequences. If you talk to people who are pro-fascist, their understanding of the world is in kind of bite-sized snippets that may sound like they make sense in a bumper sticker. And then when they're really explored, they all fall apart. And we see so many stories of this, the story of, the person who voted for Donald Trump and now is finding that their spouse is being deported. Well, that's just because they had a very simplistic view of the consequences and didn't have the details, right? The complex view of, wait, how is this actually going to manifest? Because it was all apparent, right? But they had the bumper sticker version of an understanding of the consequences of their actions. And so in that context, I think it is worth thanking all of you and recognizing that if you are engaged in reading books, whole, complete books, you are doing something very good for yourself and for the world right now. Because you are slowing yourself down. You are building your attention span so that you can examine things more carefully than they will come across in a bumper sticker, right? Than they'll come across in a TikTok video. Bumper sticker, old-fashioned technology. I'm using that metaphorically because that is not the way these folks have been deceived. They've been deceived through 30-second clips shared by Uncle Ron on Facebook, right? And they thought that makes sense. And they didn't have 30 seconds is generous, 10-second clips, memes, right? And they didn't have the patience to say, does this really make sense? What are the ramifications of this? So one of the examples I keep coming back to is I had a friend who was saying that, despite being, I would say centrist generally, he was saying, I'm going to vote against Trump, of course, but I think this whole thing about trans athletes really makes a lot of sense to me because I have a daughter who's an athlete. and just hadn't thought through the ramifications of that. And I had to say, you realize when they talk about getting trans women out of sports, they are talking about doing genital checks to your daughter. And he just hadn't considered, oh, wait a second. It seemed to him like, oh, this is great. It's going to be a benefit to my daughter. She will not be competing against trans athletes. He is under the false and sexist impression that trans women have an advantage. That's just not true based on the science. HRT is very hard on the body. There is a reason why we don't have a lot of trans women, dominating every sport. It's not advantageous. It's about inclusion. But regardless, he hadn't thought of the consequences. And I think there's a lot of folks like that where it sounds like they are doing something that will help someone they care about. Right? Oh, I'm helping my buddy who, wants to work in construction and can't find a job by saying, let's get rid of all of the immigrants, and not thinking, oh, wait a second, that's terrible, but I haven't really thought it through. And so slowing yourself down, reading full, complete books will help you slow down your thought processes and examine things more carefully and examine the impacts on, not just all of the characters in the book, but as an analogy, then all of the various people impacted by policy, right? By the kind of world that we are creating together. And so I want to thank all of you who, over the course of the last year, read a book, read multiple books. And of course, specifically, I want to thank all of you who read a book that was published by NotAPipePublishing. That means a great deal to me. That means a great deal to all of the authors. And so thank you for that. And, as always, a little reminder, if you did so, please write a review. I know it was on your to-do list, and you went, oh yeah, I'm going to do that when I get the time. So just a reminder, drop a few sentences onto whatever platform, Goodreads or, the evil corporate overlord Amazon matters a lot to authors, or, wherever you can reach people and say, hey, this was a good book. Really means a lot. So, thanks to all of you who read a NotAPipe book and took the time to, do the other thing, which, again, is also a significant factor in the rise of fascism, which is the not just lack of empathy, a direct war on empathy. And if you are reading books, you are strengthening your empathy muscles. You are literally practicing because you're caring about people who don't exist when you read fiction. Why? To hone that skill so that you can then say, oh, I learned how to care about characters who don't exist, who are very different from me, who live in a universe other than mine, so that when I then interact with real human beings in the world that we both share, I have practiced that skill of imagining how they might feel, right? And that is good for you. You have strengthened your empathy muscles by reading fiction, right? And it's not a one-to-one. It's not natural. It's not a surefire thing. There are people who can read a lot of fiction and still, not engage in empathy. But if it is a conscious choice that you make to use a book as empathy practice, then that is, something that will strengthen that muscle, right? So, thank you for improving your attention span, strengthening your empathy by reading, whether it is poetry collections or novels. It's good for you, and it is appreciated. Thanks also to my, co-editor for the ANTIFA Lit Journal and our marketing director, Chris. That is, all the work she has done for the company has gone a long way this year, and I want to recognize that. I really do appreciate that, and all the big plans she has for this next year for the merchandising side. If you haven't seen it, please go to the NotAPipePublishing store, which is now at NotAPipe Store. It's convenient, www.NotAPipeStore. Uh-oh, I think I just walked into a place. Oh no, there's another way out. This is a public through. Check this little square out. I stepped through this archway behind me. I've never been here. There are tons of these little streets. And I stepped into this archway, and there's a square here with a couple little restaurants and a little fountain in the middle. And I'm going to head down the other alley on the other side within this little maze of El Gothic. But what a cool place. So, yeah, I don't know if you can see the fountain behind me. One of these very old school. Oh. And there is a church, a different church that I didn't know of. The architecture here, it is the abundance of riches of architecture. This is a different era than the other churches that I have seen. It's newer and has kind of a different vibe, but I dig it. So yeah, thanks to Chris, thanks to the authors, and thanks to you readers, and thank you for being a viewer of this show. I have mentioned already my intention to change this show dramatically again. I know you're going all the time, but I am excited about it. The show has, already it felt inappropriate to be, reaching out and contacting and dragging in a whole bunch of authors over the last few weeks to do the kind of last few interviews. So I have not been doing that because beginning in mid-January, this show will transition to being the place where I will share a serial novel. And I've already started writing that, and I think you are going to enjoy it. I hope you're looking forward to that. Even, if that's at all tantalizing, so that you're looking forward to it a fraction of the amount that I am. But yes, I am excited about using this show to share that a chapter a week. And I think and the novel will still be very much timely. It is going to be, which is why I'm doing it as a serial rather than taking years to write this book and sharing it after the fact. I want to write a novel that is very intentionally a serial, so that it is speaking to what is going on in this moment. And I think I have an idea for a premise that will resonate. It is about the absurdity of living through what it is we are all going to be living through, and how we can try and not understand it, but tolerate its incomprehensibility together, because it is maddening, and it is not something that we can clearly understand. Instead, we're all going to feel like we're going crazy. So why not process that together? So I'm excited to share that with all of you in the coming weeks, and over the course of this next year. I don't know how long that novel will take to write, how many chapters it will end up being, but it very well may take a year to tell that complete story. And that, I think, will not be all bad for you to keep coming back and getting a chapter of that a week, and we'll get to experience 2026 with some remove, and again, some patience and some empathy, right? How do we care about these people in this story such that we learn to care about the people that we are living with, even the people we disagree with, as we are experiencing the rise of fascism together. Not just the rise of fascism, now we're in full-blown fascism. And so, I was talking with my uncle this week about reading about life here in Spain under a fascist regime and how it kind of affected the way people interacted. And he was sharing with me about his time in the 1970s visiting some Eastern Bloc countries, and how people kind of learned to speak quietly, right? Because they weren't sure if the secret police were listening. And I think that's what we're going to see Americans learn to do, is live within fascism, which is scary. It's happening, and I will soon be back there with many of you who are listening, and continuing to kind of report. This is what we are going through, and I hope that is something where you can take some comfort in knowing you're not alone, and you're not crazy for seeing this the way it is. That's the plan going forward. But looking backwards, thank you for your support over the course of this last year, and thank you whether you read NotAPipePublishing books or other books. I hope that you read books this year, and if you are the type of person who makes New Year's resolutions, I strongly encourage you, make some resolutions that are about reading this next year. Commit to reading more books. It will be good for you, not just in terms of your psychological well-being. It will be good for your interaction with the world and your connection to other people. And it's really going to be important to read long-form journalism. Instead of the short article, read the long one, right? Make a commitment to long-form journalism, podcasts and documentaries about topics instead of the short version that somebody told you. You know, you'll hear people say, do your own research. And those people almost uniformly don't do any real research. If you want to make heavy decisions, do your own research in long form, and think about all the people involved and the impacts on all the characters in the book, because then that will help you think about all the people involved in your real world decisions. Lots of people are affected by your choices, even your very small choices. Yeah, your choices matter, and you matter, and the way that you interact with other people matters in ways, of course, we can't even see, we can't even imagine. Ripples, right? So, read books, it'll have ripples. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention while I was out on my walk, and I'm just now realizing it is not too late if you are listening to this show on the first few days that it is aired. We will be doing the Anti-Fascist Write-athon on January 3rd, and it is not too late to register for that. So if you are an author, a writer of any kind, a poet, a playwright, a screenwriter, whatever, and you'd like to log in on Zoom for any period of time on January 3rd, it doesn't have to be all day long, and write with us and get to take some scheduled breaks and meet other authors, we would love to have you join us, and you can go register here. I'll put that up on YouTube. I'll put that in the show notes, and you can do that via the NotAPipePublishing webpage. Just go to the Anti-Fascist Write-athon link there and join us and write with us. So again, thanks to all of you who are readers and writers, and come write with us. And if you can't make January 3rd, remember we are open to submissions for pieces for the third volume of the Antifa Lit Journal, which will come out in probably late March, but those need to be in by the end of February, and they are coming in already, and some of them I am already excited about. So if you've got a piece, if you are trying to express the way that you are feeling right now about the rise of fascism, that is the perfect venue to share that, whether it is hopeful for a different kind of world that we could create, or it is despairing, or it is frightened, whether it is short fiction, poetry, whatever it, visual art now, we can do that. It will be in full color. So whatever is the way that you need to process and share with the world your feelings about what is happening, We've got an outlet for you in the Antifa Lit Journal. Check out volumes 1 and 2 and submit something to volume 3. That would be really cool. So, in the meantime, join us on January 3rd for the Anti-Fascist Write-athon. I'd love to get to talk with you a bit on Zoom as we move forward with that event, and that's a fundraiser for the Antifa Lit Journal, so I'd love to have you there. Thank you very much. Talk to you soon.